I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And anybody that knows me knows that this is so far this is the happiest day of the year because I have Junior from Minotaur on the show to talk about my favorite robot of all time. So, welcome to the show, Junior.
Hey, thank you, Chris. So, hello everyone. So it's nice to be here and finally made some time to join you and have this nice talk. And pretty sure it's gonna enjoy the next hour. So,
Yes, definitely. So yeah, Minotaur has been around in BattleBots since 2016. That was when I first saw Minotaur and really made a strong impression that year coming into BattleBots. I mean, I don't know that there was a match that season that I didn't just absolutely love. And I don't need to talk about every single one, but there definitely were a few that were highlights for me. Obviously, everybody knows the blacksmith match. I mean, that was it just in the nastiest knockouts that BattleBots showed, and is the most viral BattleBots fight of all time. But it's funny because for me, as good as that match was, I actually really love the one against Bronco. And I think a big reason for that is because I think that match, more than like most that I can think of, really just showed like Daniel's level of intensity as a driver and just his surgical precision with how he drives that robot. That, the whole match, I'm like, is he going to get all six tires? And I don't think he would have been happy if he had not gotten all six tires. So
he told us before, I'm gonna get all the wheels.
yeah, it's just like I think, for me, that just kind of defines what kind of robot Minotaur is and what kind of driver Daniel is. I'm sure that you probably feel the same way.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is crazy because sometimes we feel like Daniel and Minotaur becomes like the same thing. Like he's so intense like during the fights. And it actually started like way before the fight. We used to say like we have the like an hour Daniel preparation for fight. So he drinks like a bunch of energy drinks, and then yeah, he actually changed like totally his way, like even the way how he talked to us, it is totally different. It's kind of like a ritual. Like before every fight, he's always doing the same thing. Seems
Yeah,
like it works.
it's funny though, because I don't think there's many drivers that have that relationship with a robot. I mean, for me, I can only think of two that are like that, which would be Daniel and Minotaur and Jameson Go and Sawblaze, where, but in both of those cases, like Jameson is like the dragon, like he is Sawblaze, and
Yeah,
Daniel
it's
is the bull. Like
kind
he
of the
just
soul of the
is.
robot.
Exactly. He just personifies what that robot is all about.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, talk about Daniel and Jameson. They know what they're doing. Like it is. I think they know how hard it is to build those things, and that I think that's one of the main reasons how they feel so connected. Because I feel like we have a lot of drivers on the BattleBots, but I don't feel like all of them are totally into the whole building process. Like I think Jameson, he probably knows like all the single nuts on the robot, like every single part. I mean, he's just part of this. I think that's the main reason for that connection. And Daniel's pretty much the same. Now he's mostly like he's more active during the preseason and like on the building part itself. Like, but I think they're just that kind of connection is just do like that amount of force that they put to build those things. I think that's the main reason. And Jameson is a lot more, how can I say, Daniel is way intense sometimes.
They're both very intense, but it's a different kind of intensity. I
Exactly.
feel like Jameson has a very like quiet intensity, whereas Daniel is like just super, like out there and very passionate about what he's doing, and that like shines through his driving.
Sometimes you feel like Daniel is more the hurt, like it's more like the patient itself, and James is more like the brain, like it's more like thinking what he's doing and that kind of things. And Daniel is more like an emotional. And I think Daniel has been doing this for like 15 years or 16 years or so. So it is it is I've tried to drive like a few different robots before, but I never got that amount of energy that Daniel and Jameson have. So it is just crazy.
Yes. So, that was definitely a great match. And then of course in that season, Minotaur got to the semifinals versus Bombshell. And that was I mean, I like, I really feel, obviously, like I'm biased, but in my heart, I feel like if you rerun that match 10 times, like Minotaur's going to win most of those times. If you rerun it, it just, you were definitely winning the beginning of that match, and then just at some point the tide turned, and I think it was really unfortunate. I mean, obviously I'm sure Bombshell was happy that they won that match, but I think most people wanted that final to be Minotaur and Tombstone. I mean, I think that's what everybody was hoping for, and it just didn't happen. From your perspective, what was it that changed how that match ended up going?
So it is hard to remember that
Yes,
fight.
it was a long time ago.
Oh yeah, but I do remember a lot of things like before and after the fight. The, most of people know like Minotaur became from the robots that we had for so long that's called Toro Maximus. They're used to compete on robo games, but robo games is such a different environment. Like we used to do like a 5 fights a day. Heavyweight, it is it's a lot of fights per day. So we just, okay, it is Battlebots now. It's different, 15 days competition, and we got to do our best, and we came with a lot of new ideas how to protect the souls, because the souls they were pretty new for us. We never had like that kind of things inside of the arena. And then okay, so we got to do a ceramic top plate and a titanium plate and whatever, a lot of things. And then we end up with a plate of really hard steel. It was a 41, 43, 40, really, really hard. And I do remember Bombshell hitting us, and the plate just bended, like it kind of broke and bent, and then we got stuck in the arena. I still remember those things like just as was yesterday. And I, to be very honest with you, I never expected us to go that far on the very first year, because we pretty much brought like a one single Minotaur for the whole championship. We actually had two, but a lot of issues with the whole machining process. We pretty much did everything like 30 days before the championship, and then we got to put everything on our luggage and bring to LA and assemble the whole thing in like then I do remember those scenes, like a scene top plate to just band on the arena, and then we lost the wheel. I do that's it's sad to remember, but yeah. And then after that fight, I still remember like how Bombshell ended up like they were down, like they were like a crazy in try to rebuild, because during BattleBots we pretty much the only day that we do 2 fights in a day, it is like semi-final and finals. So I remember the finals happened like early in the day, and then the finals happened like only the last fight. I think was the last fight. We only used to have like a Sin City, Slugfest, those kind of things, but just the championship. And we were looking for Bombshell, and no, we we were so close. Man, didn't happen. But I feel bad when we lose for our own things, like whenever you're not ready, just like happened with, I'm not gonna say like a single fight, but whenever you're not able to spin up and those things. But whenever the opponent's better than us, I don't feel that bad. It just felt like, oh, we just missed the opportunity. But we never felt like crazy bad, but it still hurts. They know that
Yeah.
it still hurts.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I mean, like, obviously at that point in time, if you had won that fight, you would have been fighting Tombstone. And back then, Tombstone was it. Like that was the robot that just was impossible to beat. And you actually ended up facing Tombstone in the first match the next season when it
Next season.
came back in 2018. And it didn't work out. Obviously, like I said, at that point Tombstone was practically unkillable, but it's still, that was a good match, and I think it was great to at least see it play out, but you never know how it would have gone if it had happened 2 years prior.
I always say like between seasons the things change. Like it's a, I always see people like, oh, we just fought Tantrum like at the very first fight. And oh, how could it be last season? It could end up totally different. We never know. Like every day is a different day on BattleBots. That's the main thing. We don't know like the spares. We don't know like how the robot end up the last fight and how they start the new one. But I would say like finals with Tombstone that season would be like it would be really nice. Even like winning or losing, it would definitely be the huge thing for us. Definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, like when you look at those seasons, that first season and then that second season, like, I mean, Minotaur was just so good those seasons. To the Tombstone loss was actually the only loss that you had in that 2018 season up until the finals. And there were a lot of, really great matches in that season, including a rematch with Blacksmith, which, again, did not disappoint. And then I think also like a really definitive win against Lockjaw, which, obviously Donald Hudson's a great builder and driver. So,
Yep.
I thought that was huge as well. But then you have to face Bite Force. And, like you did get a wedgelet off. And I think like that in that match, there was a situation where both weapons were down at a point. And then Bite Force's weapon came back and Minotaur's did not. And I think that was probably the difference in that situation.
That thing is so well built. It is really hard to make them lose their weapon or a drive system or whatever. And that fight was really, I don't really can say a lot of things like for the fight itself. I watched that one on TV. Actually, I was doing my masters, so I had to go back to Brazil like on the semifinals, I think. I wasn't able to go all the way to the finals, and I was no, no, we were so close. But once again, we lost for Bite Force. So if that is a single robot that we can choose to end up losing in a match, I would say Bite Force. I mean, there is no shame on that. And they pretty much broke the whole frame apart, both sides. We had an issue with bad material from China, and actually it was a Brazilian sourcing that just provided material from China, and we ended up figuring out that the aluminum that we bought as 6061 was Castle 6061. So we lost one frame against Tombstone on the very first fight, and we did some reinforcements on the side, and we welded a lot of things trying to make it stronger. But you're never strong enough for Bite Force. That's the thing. They,
It was just like such a great robot, and I think that the whole field, in a way should be lucky that Paul hasn't been back since, because it really was just dominant. And again, like one of those bots that you just couldn't beat. I'd love to see it back. I'd love to see what it would do today.
Yep.
But yeah, it was a great match. And I mean, like just getting to the finals, especially in the second season that you're in it, was a huge accomplishment, and I think built up a lot of momentum. Now, surprisingly, in the 2019 season, Minotaur started the season with 2 losses to Whiplash and Gigabyte,
With Flash
and
and Gigabyte.
I was like, what is happening? But then, honestly, in the Desperado, because you ended up going to the Desperado, that was one of the most impressive things that I've seen. That run, especially beating Endgame, like an absolute dissection of Endgame. And then losing, unfortunately, to Black Dragon, who is also another Brazilian team who just happened to have a slightly better run in that. But it still did, I think, change the season for Minotaur.
Yeah, I used to say season 4, we had pretty much like 2 different seasons on the same season, because we just at the end of the season 3 against the fight against Bite Force, we just figured out, okay, we gotta rebuild, and we used the same frame for season 3, 2, and 3, and then we had no extra frames after Tombstone and Bite Force. We just figured out, okay, let's do something different, let's go bigger, and then we increased the inertia of the drone itself. We were running like a 200 millimeters on diameter, and then we just start to do like a 220, like a 10% of increase of inertia, and actually in diameter, and like inertia was like a almost 2 times the inertia from the season 2. And very first time is running the robot was inside of the test box on the Battlebots, and we knew like it's gonna take a while to make it work properly. And we had the very first fight against Whiplash, didn't go well. I I d- I do remember, I think Whiplash didn't work very well as well. It was a kind of we were all expecting a lot from Whiplash and Minotaur, and it wasn't like a death fight that we always wanted to have. So, and then the fight against Gigabyte that we, oh, okay, we fix it after the Whiplash, but we just end up bring with almost no clearance, like the drone and the ground was scraping the floor, and then we were not able to spin, and they spin fast, and they hit pretty hard. I love John, by the way. He's most one of the kindest person on the sport for sure. I know him for so long. I mean, we have a lot of nice time in China and back in Robo games, and it's really nice to face John. And then I think we felt lucky after, right? That one was a good
In the
fight.
Desperado, yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, Desperados. We do remember, like, we were pretty much, do we have to join the Desperado? And I remember the whole thing. We might not make on the top 6 at that time. At this time, it was top 16, I think. We might not make it. If we do it, we might be like on the very end of the bracket, and then we'll be facing like Tombstone. And yeah, we end up doing the Desperado, and that fight with Black Dragon is something that like Black Dragon guys always remember. Oh, we guys lost, and I would say like if we use the 2022 rules, yes, we lost the fight, and I've always arguing about these results, and about that is exactly results against Black Dragon, because they just lost the weapon. I always tell them. I love those guys, and we talk a lot like on the preseason and on the competition in Brazil. We end up making the top 16 anyways.
Yes, yes, exactly. You know, and I like, even though you lost to Black Dragon, like you said, that really changed the season because you then beat Shatter, beat Cobalt, which is no small task at all. It's a
Oh
very
yeah.
destructive robot. And then the Hydra match, which I personally loved because, but in the pre-show interview, Jake said that he'd flipped Minotaur at least 8 times. He only flipped you once. And I mean, I loved it because it's my favorite robot versus the villain of BattleBots, who I automatically want to
Oh.
root against because it's fun to do that. And it's just, that was a great win for me.
I do remember Jake. He was like doing a lot of things. He just put a tent on the Hydra and trying to put new things. And it was even it was before the bracket that he used like in 2020, I think. But he at back this time he was already like I think in different accessories for different robots. And I do remember like I think it was one or two big hits. We just ended up like on the side of them, and they almost have no clearance. And I do remember that fight. And after that, we faced Death Row. That's the thing that I remember
Yes,
the fight
yes.
against
And,
Hydra.
and I swear, like, I feel like it's almost a thing that, like, every year that you just happen to face the robot that is like so good in that year that they're, you know, very hard to beat. And 2019 was definitely like the year for Death Roll, where they were just knocking everybody out and, you know, really on a roll. And, you know, it, I think at that point they were unbeaten.
Yeah,
And you were pretty evenly matched, I felt, until you lost the weapon. And that was again the big difference there.
yeah. I would say the Cobalt fight was also like I think Cobalt was they were winning all the fights before the fight with Minotaur. And that one was tough as well. I remember that we broke a lot of parts inside of Minotaur. The one with Death Row was bad. And one of the weakest point, I would say like one of the weakest point on Minotaur was like how we were very reliable on the season 2 and 3. Like the run was, I think the the inertia and the energy and the power of the motors, they were like a pretty they were the motors were enough, to run the drum. And then when we upgraded the whole thing, we lost a lot of what is a good word for that? So we were not able to spin the whole time. That was the point. So one of the toughest part of being Minotaur is how we handle our own hits, because if we hit pretty hard, but we have to absorb all of that energy as well. We try to throw much as we can on the floor, but we see a lot of energy back into the robot, and that thing just mess up the magnets and everything. And that was the weakest spot on Minotaur, how unreliable the weapon was. I think that's a good word. I don't know if it exists in English, unreliable, but is it a word in English?
Oh yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
But yeah, and that for all. I remember I think 80% of the fights that we lost on BattleBots was due to clearance and got stuck in the arena. It was Tombstone. We got stuck on the arena because Tombstone just make a huge hole on the floor, and we were out of the 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 wheels were out of the floor. Bombshell, same thing. Clearance and Death Row, same thing, but I can say that they won us anyway. Like even if the fight, even if it goes like for the judge's decision, they deserved that. They did way better than us on that fight. And yeah,
It happens. It
it happened.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, like, I think, then obviously there was the year off where, you guys weren't in it because of COVID and things like that. And then coming back in 2021, and, that was definitely it for me as a fan. That was a hard season, because, I was so excited Minotaur's back, and then, watching the show and kind of hearing about what had happened prior to the tournament. I was like, they have to win this year. Like they have to. And then that first match with Sawblaze, which I'll have to say, like, despite the fact that Minotaur lost that match, it was probably my favorite loss that Minotaur had, because
Yep.
it was so impressive that the robot was on fire for pretty much the whole match and was still going and still battling. But I think, like, that is very symbolic of what your team is all about. So I think that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah, season 6 was tough in every single way. So we were like one season out of the whole thing, and a lot of things changed. The whole competition just changed like every year, And I remember that I wasn't working at Turkmenistan like 1 month before the competition, and I flew straight to Turkmenistan to Las Vegas, and we were like pretty much 1.5 year without even touch the robot. We keep a storage in Las Vegas, and that's where all of our parts was like sitting for like a year and a half due to the whole COVID situation. All the batteries, they were like almost like a year without being recharged. And we had a fight against Sawblaze. I think that's my point of view was one of the best fights that we ever had. So we lost the fight, but we just show like what we came for on season 6. So it was a really nice open doors. So Jameson really deserved that, and it was amazing to see Saul Blaze like just being so powerful, and it is really nice to follow like how the robots they they just get better, 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 and better. And I think Saw Blaze is a huge example for that. It just ended like they don't even use the saw anymore. So
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
absolutely. It was a great match. And I mean, like, I talked to Jameson about this match, and I told him that it was so hard for me because Minotaur and Sawblaze are my two favorite robots. So to watch my two favorite robots fight each other was very very difficult, because I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. But it was a really great match. I think a really great way to start the season. And like I said, I think it showed that, like, resilience and heart. And I think, like, especially for what the team was going through in the last season, that was really big.
oh yeah, and we didn't have Marco at this time. So Marco is such a key player for us. Has a lot of experience. It's pretty much like the the person that we go whenever we have the problems. And I do remember I was like next to Daniel during the fight, and then we were on fire. He just looked at me, oh, what are you doing, dude? You just keep going. We go until we cannot go anymore. And then are you sure? Yes, we rebuild. We do it once again. And then he just kept going. I still remember that. Oh, we can do it. We can do it. And we went to the judges, and it was pretty good actually. It was a hell of a fight.
Yes, it was. Overall, like, obviously the rest of that season went well. Like, again, to use an example of, like, a really definitive fight, the fight against Endgame. Because I mean, obviously I'm a Minotaur fan, so I feel that Minotaur is going to win that match. But because of how good Endgame had been, that, the past couple of years, I think a lot of people, thought Endgame was going to win. And it was just like Minotaur really dominated that match. And I think at that point I was like, Minotaur's gonna win the giant nut. Like they have to. This was just such a really great match. Kind of talk about that one, because I think that was a real high point as well.
That fight still give me like because they I was about to say they were the one to be beaten, but no, they're still the ones to because they're still powerful, and that thing is, is a hell of a robot. And I do remember the whole like, okay, we gotta do this, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. We have done it before because that was the second fight against them. We won the first one and said, okay, we can do it once again. Doesn't matter if they are winning the whole thing, and the whole pre-fight was like a very intense as well because we were trying to find the right drum, the right accessories. I remember that we did like a lot of different forks, and we are playing like with them like, oh, we're gonna use that fork, we're gonna use that fork, oh, we're gonna use that fork, and I think we ended up like using no forks at all. I think I don't remember the configuration for that fight, but it was insane to see. Or we are spinning for 3 minutes. That was one of the things, and we hitting them like at their heart, and it was pretty good. I felt so good at the end of the fight, and I remember the interview like. "Ooh, you guys gotta make it to the giant." Yes, we did it against Endgame. Look at what we did.
Right,
Was
right, exactly. Yeah, because like when you look at the prior seasons, and like I had mentioned about facing these robots that were just like really good in that year, and like when you face Endgame, you're like, okay, it's like that same type of situation. It's this really good robot that's been solid all year, and you beat them. And that was great. And I know for me, when I was watching it going into the next fight, you had also previously in the past faced Witch Doctor, and you had beat them solidly. So, I was like, obviously, like this fight is going to go that way as well. Like they beat Witch Doctor, and it didn't go that way. And I
it
think
was the
I've
right path,
I've talked to so many people about this fight. I've had referee John on the show, and I've talked to him about it. I've talked to the judges about it. Probably I've talked about this fight more than any other fight. And I think part of that is because, I certainly had some opinions about things related to the match. And, really, yeah, I think for me, and referee John, agreed on this point, is the unstick, the quick count with the unstick, putting everything else aside. That was a really big thing, because even though Minotaur was, kind of disabled, but I mean, you had a shot there potentially, and then the timeout was called. That was, I'm sure, a hard match. I mean, I know how hard it was for me to watch. I can only imagine as a team how hard it was to go through that situation. And, you certainly could see how passionate everybody felt about it after things were over.
Yeah, that thing was intense actually. So, and there are a lot of things that people don't really keep put in mind. That was the very first year for us with the unstick rule. I just told you like pretty much all the fights that we lost was doing the like got stuck in the arena, and then they just got stuck at like I think was pretty much like 9 seconds or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that I was yelling at the referee. No, we're trying to fight. We're moving. We have control. And a lot of people even said that I went over like the line, and I feel bad if I did, but I never in any never try to be disrespectful or something like that. I was just trying to make my point that we were trying to going forward. We're trying to attack, and they were avoiding. Like they had a lot of reasons. I wouldn't like to be in Andreas and Mike's, like at this point. definitely, because we know how powerful the drone was at this point, and we were still spinning like a full speed. And they know if we hit them, the fight could end the same way they winning, but they could have a really tough rebuilding process like after the fight. I do understand they avoiding us, but it wasn't what we all wanted. Like 9 seconds were pretty much like one word, but like a pursuing the other one and the other one like going around. I understand they had their reasons, and there was a lot of like misconnected things, like the judges, the referee saying like, "Oh, we're gonna count down," the other one, "No, we're not gonna count down," and it was intense. Happened. That is nothing we can do about. I mean, we did a lot of things about. So BattleBots has a set of new rules like to avoid that kind of stuff, and I believe that it is definitely in the on the past, and which doctor deserve a lot of good things. That thing is insane. Like the way how they do the amount of patience that they have for this, Andrea and Mike, and we really respect them. And that thing just became like huge, and at the end they people don't even ask us like, "Oh, do you have anything to talk about, like have anything against which?" No, we don't. We know like pretty much what BattleBot is today is. We owe a lot for for Mike and Andrea, because they do a lot of good things to promote BattleBots stand. They have a tons of fun fans on, and the way how everybody treat that thing was bad. Like we know bad thing happens. Yes, we do our best to avoid them, but they can happen. And the way how people manage this wasn't good at all. Like because they we had like the witch doctor fans trying to arguing that I was way too much of the referee, and people trying to make Minotaur point and yelling bad things for Andrea and things that she never deserved to hear. I feel bad for her. We talk like on the during the season, so try to make sure that we we don't keep bring like that things back. And it is in the past, definitely. We feel bad because season was really tough, and I really think that we deserve to do better than that we had. And
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that is
for me, it was more. I was unhappy with the way things happened, but it certainly, for me, I was like, no one should be blaming your team for reacting in any sort of way, and no one should be blaming Witch Doctor for anything, because it
exactly
was it was no one's fault. It was just something that
exactly
happened. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but I'm glad that BattleBots really looked at that match and a couple of other matches and decided to make changes. I know when I spoke with Greg, he specifically mentioned having conversations with Marco about that match specifically, and then changing the rules to avoid things like that from happening in the future, which I think is great. And that's something that we'll obviously continue to see how that works in the new season. But I'm glad to see that BattleBots reacted to that and said, hey, a change needs to be made so that this doesn't happen again.
definitely. If that fight end up like I think that's the best thing of the Witch Doctor and Minotaur fight is the way how BattleBots react. Not only the Witch Doctor and Minotaur, I think Hydra
And
and Tantrum.
Tantrum, yeah.
I think those two fights, BattleBots just looked after this and okay, we got to do something different, or otherwise people not gonna really believe that what we are doing. And yeah, I think that was the best part of the fight. After the fight, like they just really looked for that. We had a lot of talks with not only Greg, the whole production, Aaron. was very supportive as well. And yeah, didn't go that well.
Yeah. I'm glad that obviously we're in the new season of BattleBots, which is considered World Championship VII at this point, and you had the headline match in the first episode versus Tantrum. And I think you kind of alluded to this earlier about like saying, oh, well, you fought Tantrum, so you could use that to say, well, what would have happened in the previous season if you had fought Tantrum? But you don't know,
We don't know. It's a different season.
It's a different season. It's a different robot.
Exactly.
You don't know. It was exciting that you had that opportunity, and I was obviously very excited because Minotaur was, I felt very dominant in that first match against Tantrum. I know they were trying out some new things with their robot, and, that may have contributed to some of the issues on their end, but it was still a very impressive way to start the season, and, something that I was happy to see, coming off of a very tough season and then coming in with this really big win.
Oh, definitely. So we know exactly what they went through, like rebuilding things. So they had a really nice Tantrum season 7, 6. I always confuse on the numbers.
I know with the numbers. Yeah,
The
I think
last
that.
season.
Yes.
So yes, season 6, and they did a lot of changes. But I still believe that Tantrum is still the same good robots that won the championship and on the season 6, definitely. And that fight against them was like we 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 did a new Minotaur for season 7, and we just end up, okay, we cannot afford the same mistakes that we had in the past. Let's stay with the same configurations that we have, same inertia, same drone inertia, same everything, and let's just try to address like the things that we really need to fix. So we end up making like a new casings for the models that I would say that brought a lot of reliability for Minotaur, and we were able to spin like the whole fight against Tantrum, and like it's spin properly, with a lot of energy. And I think that the change that we did for the season 7, they just prove it to be like the right ones, like we end up like not changing a lot of uh, the outside Minotaur, but we changed a lot of the inside, and that brought a lot of good things for us. I always see people saying like, "Oh, what happened with Minotaur like after season 3?" So people don't realize that how hard it is to make new things, to make new things and make it works. That's the main part. And I truly believe that we are very close to the best configurations that we ever had on Minotaur. You guys, trust me, we're gonna to show that. And we did a lot of improvements, and we spent a lot of time trying to make things for different robots and make it to put on a good show. And then we always work to put on a good show. That's the main thing. And the fight against Tantrum, I remember then put like the forks on the front, like a single fork, and I was, that's gonna bring us a lot of trouble. And we ended up just spanning it, and then was gone. And I remember then like they got stuck on the arena and like upside down. And then I remember look at the team and everything. "Oh, Daniel, you stay. We know how expensive and how hard it is to rebuild that thing. And we know like we have a lot of fights for the season. And it was the very first year that we got to know the very first 4 fights in advanced. And we knew like we know how tough the next fights are. And then we just said, okay, let's just save as much as we can and just wait for the countdown. And it was the win against the very sad seasons that we had on the season season 5. It was really good. So it was kind of relief, like you know that we did the right thing, and was was a really good moment actually. Winning against the champion, it is always a good way to start a season. And I think it was the very first season that we won the first fight.
Um, the first one in a while. You did win your first fight in the 2016 season against Photon Storm.
Oh,
So
true. Yep, I think it was the only one.
yep. So normally it started off with a loss. So yeah, starting
Yep,
off with a win is a good thing. And I
we
mean,
lost Tombstone, uh, Whiplash. Yep,
yep, and Sawblaze.
Power
Yeah.
Blaze. Yep, that's true. I almost forgot the season 2.
Yeah, I know it was so long. It feels like forever ago.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
it was
mean,
2016, right?
2016.
Ouch, I'm getting old for that.
It was the year my daughter was born, so
Oh.
but yeah, so like I mean, Minotaur, really looking at the full scope of everything at BattleBots. I mean, so impressive when you think about the fact, and obviously I'm not going to reveal anything for this season, but I mean, when you look at the prior seasons, Minotaur has never done worse than getting to the quarterfinals. You've always gotten to at least the quarterfinals, and not many robots can say that.
We always try to make people see like how hard it is to win a BattleBots. We have like the top 50 robots in the world. We have one of the highest, like a skilled group of people that I ever met. And whenever we fight like a people like Jameson, like the guys from Tantrum, so that kind of people, they really show like what they are doing and how good they are. You guys are going to see the best version of Minotaur ever. That's I'm pretty sure. That
Hey, that's great. I think that's perfect. Yeah, it's I think that it'll be really good, and yeah, I'm really excited for this season. And I think adding in, making sure everybody gets 4 fights and everything else, I think is going to be really great, because sometimes you don't get to see enough of certain robots, and it really gives a stronger like diversity in between the matches, like to the field and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. And I'm so glad that we finally got to do this, because I know, not just myself, but there's obviously a lot of fans that have also really wanted a Minotaur episode on this show. And so I'm glad that we got to do that.
and hopefully we're gonna make a new one, another one with Marco and Daniel and more team members.
Yes, at
So
any moment when everybody is ready and available to do that, I would be extremely excited. Yeah, I will have to try and not get too like excited about it, because
now we're gonna make it. I'm pretty sure.
awesome. Well, yeah, so for everybody that's watching the show, please make sure that you continue to like and subscribe and support the show, and let me know what else you want to see, because I will do my best to make it happen. So yeah, just keep watching BattleBots this season, and we will be in for a lot of exciting stuff.